LinkedIn is pretty amazing at helping you grow your small business. We cannot stop your new clients from emailing you at 3 a.m. We can help you sell, market, and hire in one place. We cannot help you be in 3 places at once. And while we can't help you organize your calendar, LinkedIn can help you land more clients so you have a calendar to organize. Grow your small business on LinkedIn. Learn more at linkedin.com/smallbusiness.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. $0 commission does not apply to customers designated by Fidelity as a professional equity trader. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a service fee of $100. See details at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.
Hello and welcome to I Talk to Ghosts. I'm your haunted host, Jennifer, a professional medium and a teller of ghost stories. I thought this would be a perfect week to do a best of ghost story episode from ghost stories from the earlier seasons that you may have missed. These are some of my favorite classic ghost stories, and they are guaranteed to give you a few spooky chills. Enjoy the ghost stories, and I'll be back next week with my regularly formatted episodes. Enjoy! My dad used to visit some clients who lived in a creepy, isolated farmhouse. People claim to have seen ghosts and spirits around the farm since the 1850s, and the owners of the house joke about it frequently. On one visit to his clients, they sat in an empty room around a desk. Now, this room was literally vacant, apart from the desk. No bookshelves, no furniture. They were discussing the area when my dad brings up the ghosts spotted on the farm, and the clients tell him about a middle-aged man who died there around 60 years ago. "10 to 20 minutes go on, and they go into more business-related stuff. Then literally, out of nowhere, drops an obituary, a freshly cut obituary. My dad picked it up and inspected it. It belonged to that very man they were discussing earlier. And to clarify, there was nothing in the room for it to fall from. I think about researching more about that man, but I just can't gather the nerve to do it. In 2016, my fiancé and I adopted a beautiful kitten. She was black, white, and ginger. I believe she's a calico and a ragdoll mix. She has the most playful and loving personality in a cat I've ever seen, and is basically just a little bundle of pure joy. For our kitten's own safety, we put her in the sitting room at night with all her toys, some food and water, and a bed and a litter tray, and we check on her throughout the night too, just to make sure she's okay. She's normally asleep on the sofa, snoozing in her little bed, or playing with her toys, or just plain getting up to no good, as kittens usually do. After a few weeks of her living in her new home and us getting used to having a kitten around, me and my fiancé began seeing another cat. I was awoken one night by what felt like a cat jumping onto the bottom of the bed and walking over my legs and feet. I sat up a little and I looked to see what I thought was our kitten, as it was rather small and white. It then jumped off the bottom of the bed and went towards the other end of the room. I promptly woke my fiancé and told him that the kitten had somehow gotten out of the sitting room. But when we went down to check on her, she was still in the room, minding her own business, with the door still firmly shut. Well, we checked and checked and checked our room, but we couldn't find any sign of a cat. I couldn't explain it, and my fiancé said I must have dreamt it, which I know for a fact that I didn't, because whatever it was woke me up out of a deep sleep, and I felt it walking on my legs and feet. I kept on seeing what I thought was our cat on and off out of the corner of my eye for a few more days after that incident, but nothing quite as direct. My fiancé, however, had an encounter of his own a few days later. We were getting ready for bed one night, and my fiancé was putting on his pajamas when he suddenly turned around and, clear as day, saw a cat sitting there watching him. Thinking it was our cat, he approached her to pick her up and ask her what she was doing out of her room. Not that she could have told him anyway, when he realized it wasn't actually her. Before he could even speak, the misty white cat ran off rather quickly down the landing, away from our room, and disappeared into nothing. So I had a very strange thing occur late in the evening on New Year's Eve. I had been out at a party, as is customary, and around 2:30 in the morning, a few friends and I were headed back to our town. We drove into the residential parking lot outside the condo complex I lived in and parked. We hadn't even locked the car when a man comes stumbling up the road towards us. This road, for reference, runs through the parking area and down a hill to a few houses. I know pretty much all the people who live down that small hill. The man didn't really perturb me or my friends, so we took our time as we stood around and chatted. Then a minute later, a high school girl wearing no shoes or socks and just a short dress comes walking up the hill. At this point, I started wondering what kind of weird party was going on at one of my neighbors' houses. The girl walked through the main parking area without a word, and then turned onto the main street and headed up that. At first, we assumed we shouldn't worry because, despite her lack of shoes, she was walking straight and seemed to know what she was doing. That's when things got strange. After she had disappeared from sight up the street, she came bolting back down as fast as she could, even in her shoeless state. When she reached my friends and I, she slowed down but looked very spooked. My friend asked her what had happened, and she stopped. Then, with horror-stricken eyes, she pointed up the main street. We all turned and looked, but there was nothing in our direct line of sight. One of my friends and I decided we'd go up the street to investigate what was scaring this girl so much. We made sure my other friend and the girl got in the car and locked it as they waited for us. We went up the main street, and for 5 minutes, we saw nothing. Then we passed under the one street light on the upper portion of the street. This streetlight has a stubborn and nerve-wracking tendency to turn off at night once you pass under it. To my dismay, it turned off, leaving us in total darkness, save for the faint glow of a light at the end of someone's driveway. That's when we saw it. Something that looked like a naked person but wasn't quite human waddled down the street towards us. It moved as though it were half squatting, and because of this, its hands dragged along the ground as they hung limp at its sides. I couldn't make out its face, and my friend told me later that he couldn't either. It was also making a throaty, gurgling noise, as if it was almost choking on something. All we could do in that moment was turn and run as fast as we could back down the street. I ran straight inside my condo, and my friend ran to his car. In a moment, I could hear the car screeching out of the parking area. I locked the door and didn't even bother to look outside to see if the thing was still coming down the street. Book a medium reading with me. If you have a past loved one you would like to connect with, a spirit reading can be an amazing and never spooky experience. Every medium is different, but I strive to give you specific details that align only to you and your loved ones. Curious? Visit italktoghosts.com for links to book with me. I can't wait to meet you. Here is my dad's story as I remember it being told to me. My dad, some of his brothers, and some friends were out hunting, camping, and exploring. After a while, the sky began to cloud over and darken, and it started to pour down rain. They were going to go ahead and try and make it home, or find a spot on the way to wait out the storm, when they saw an old 3-story house out in the woods. They had never seen this house before, but thought that if they were at home, whoever lived there probably wouldn't mind if they waited there until the storm passed, or at least subsided a bit. When they went to knock on the door and got no answer, they noticed it was unlocked. They looked through the windows and saw how dusty it was, with what furnishings that were left were sagging from age. They decided, in this situation, it probably wouldn't matter if they went inside until the rain stopped. Since it was only early evening, they left their bedrolls and gear in the front room, looked around downstairs, then went upstairs and looked around the 2nd and 3rd floors of the house. The one detail I remember is the beautiful staircase with its carved banisters. As it had started getting dark, they went downstairs and, upon deciding to spend the night, they laid out their bedrolls, lied down, and kept talking to each other. Then, they all heard what sounded like chains rattling and dragging on the floor, and something moaning and crying. My dad said it sounded like it was walking from the top floor and coming down the staircase. They all jumped up and grabbed their stuff when they saw her at the top of the stairs on the 2nd floor landing. And she was coming down to the front room where they were. It was a woman in a long white dress. She had chains wrapped around her, which were dragging down the stairs with every step she took, and she was moaning and crying. But the worst thing, the thing which sent them fleeing out the front door into the cold, dark, rainy night, was that she had no head. A headless, chain-dragging, moaning, crying ghost in a white dress. He said they ran through the woods without stopping until they got home. I live on an old farm, which my family has lived on for about 70 years. Ever since I was little, there have been odd happenings going on there. I grew up with my 2 cousins and my little sister. We were all pretty close in age. Last Christmas, we were sitting at my aunt's house talking about stuff, and somehow ghosts came up in the conversation. I started talking about when I was about 6 or 7, and I saw a lady in white for the first time. I started telling my story, and my oldest cousin, who's 3 years younger than I am, interrupted and added things to my story. At first, I didn't know where he got it from. Maybe it was a good guess. But then as I went on, my sister piped up and said she had a similar experience too. What I've seen, or I should say we've seen, was exactly this. We were all about the same age when we first saw her, as I come to find out. I was standing in the circle drive by the barn, going over to my grandmother's house, and I was walking across, admiring the evening sky, when something caught my eye. At first I thought I was seeing things, but I stopped dead in my tracks and stared. I knew my grandmother wasn't home, but oddly, there was someone standing in the upstairs window, wearing all white. It looked like a wedding dress, with the veil pulled back. I just stood there for a few minutes and watched. There was a young woman standing there with the curtains pulled back, staring blankly towards the sunset, white as a sheet, almost as white as her dress, with long black wavy hair and a cut on her left cheek. One of the dogs started to bark from the gate behind me and made me jump. I turned around, but as I looked back, she was gone. I never said anything to anybody, but I had seen her off and on since then. As we were talking and discussing all the things this event had in common with the experiences of my sister and cousin, we realized the exactness could not be a coincidence. The whole time, my aunt just sat there with a sort of smile on her face. My cousin was the first to notice she hadn't said anything, and then shortly we all stopped because we figured she didn't believe us or thought we were insane. We asked her what she was smiling about, and she told us that she did believe us. She went on to tell us in World War I, a young couple with the last name of Black had owned the house. One day, the husband got called off to war, and every night the young bride would go and stand in the window to wait. I guess one of our relatives was friends with the young girl's parents. She told us that the parents tried to get the young girl to go out and to move on, but the girl still waited, and she became sick. Then she got a letter in the mail to inform her that her husband had been killed in battle, and she went into a state of mourning and got even sicker, no matter what her parents did. A month later, her mother went to check on her and found the girl had hung herself in the same room, wearing the wedding gown. We were all taken aback when we heard this story. It's the same house I'm living in now. This summer, we were reconstructing the bathroom, and we found a sort of compartment under the floor of diaries, journals, money, and goods. Since then, we've had electronics turning on and off, such as the TV and radios. Lately, I've been hearing voices from the corner of my room of a woman and a man bickering. but it fades out when we get close to investigate. I'm just wondering what things are going to come up in the future, or if this will ever, truly, fade away. In 1988, I was 15 years old, living at home with my dad, my mom, and 2 brothers. My grandmother decided to come live with us as my grandfather had died a few months previous, and she didn't like living alone. We were happy to have her live with us, but the lack of room had my parents looking for a bigger home to fit us all. Our new home had been built around 1900, over 3 floors with an attic, a separate garage, and a couple of outbuildings for us kids to explore. My grandmother claimed the ground floor guest room. My parents were on the first floor, and us kids had our own rooms on the second floor. We were living there happily for 2 or 3 months when my mom asked Dad at breakfast if he could put some boxes in the attic of stuff she didn't need around the house. Reluctantly, he agreed, as none of us had so far given the attic more than a passing look when we first moved in. It was dirty, with inches of dust on the floor. The only thing up there was a couple of cupboards and an old bed frame. My mom thought the room was probably a former maid or nanny room, as the house was the right age for when help of the house was often housed in the attic. The house was wonderful until Dad took those boxes up to the attic. It didn't start until that night, after we had all gone to bed. I was fast asleep when banging on my door woke me up. I got up to find my 2 brothers at my door, frightened. I brought them in and was about to ask what was wrong when I heard a giant bang, like a heavy box or something had been dropped on the floor of the attic. Startled, I looked at them. My brother said, "You heard it too? What's going on?" I said, "Don't worry, it's probably Dad moving more stuff around the attic." "At this time of night?" He shook his head. "Not when he has to get up early for work." We sat for a few minutes, wondering what to do, when all of a sudden, it sounded like everything in the attic sounded like it was being thrown around the room at the same time. My brothers and I ran to our parents' room. They were already awake from the noise. Dad was about to tell us to stop making so much noise when he saw us run into their room with the noise still going on. A minute or 2 later, the same whirlwind bangs and thumps brought grandmother to see what was going on. We all looked up at the ceiling. It sounded like someone was picking up the old bed up there and throwing it across the room. My mom begged my dad to go look and see what was going on. Too scared to go alone, we all grabbed our flashlights or candles, and Dad his cricket bat, and reluctantly we followed him up the stairs. As soon as we reached the stairs, the noises stopped. So, we climbed to the top of the flight of stairs. Dad suddenly tripped over a pile of boxes. Mom saw them and asked him why he hadn't put them in the attic like she asked. Dad swore he had and had locked the attic door behind him. Mom suggested we put the box in the spare room for the night, as she had gone suddenly pale when Dad had promised her he placed the boxes in the attic and wasn't fooling around. Once the boxes were moved to the room, there was no noise for the rest of the night. The next night when Dad came home from work, he and my mother talked it over. If someone had moved the boxes, they would know when they looked at the attic due to the thick layer of dust on everything. Dad was sure someone was playing tricks on him. He grabbed the attic keys and we all followed him back up the attic stairs and watched as he unlocked and pulled the door towards himself to open. We all peered inside. None of the dust, except a teeny spot just inside the door where Dad had put the boxes, had been disturbed at all. Dad had just opened the door and had dropped the boxes in and hadn't walked around. There were no other signs of anything having been there or that anything had been moved. There was nothing that could have made those violently loud noises the night before. We couldn't understand it. The next night we tried again for experiment's sake and put the boxes back up in the attic. Again, the noises kept up until the boxes were moved downstairs, with always no sign of movement in the dusty room. My dad had had enough and banned anyone from using the attic to store things. Later, he blocked up the entrance of the attic when my brother dared venture up the stairs, and something he couldn't see tried to push him back down the stairs. We lived in the house for 2 more years, until we moved to Birmingham for my dad's work. That house never felt welcoming. We were glad to eventually be able to afford to move out. We still have no idea what was in the attic. Whatever it was didn't like us disturbing its place of residence. Even now, given my knowledge of ghosts, I'd still not want to go up there and find out just what was so angry. It still frightens me to this day. And with that, dear listener, we have reached the end of this episode of I Talk to Ghosts. I hope you've enjoyed this classic collection of best of ghost stories. Do you have a favorite story from tonight that's going to make it a little difficult to sleep? I would love to know, so please reach out. In the meantime, wherever you wander off to in this world or the next, just remember, come back and visit with me. Have a lovely evening and good night.